Do you want to know how you can use LinkedIn advertising to get in front of anyone, any crazy hard to reach decision maker, a C-suite in a huge company, a C-suite in Microsoft, Oracle, whoever it is? Then this episode is for you. Hello, Sales Nation. Welcome to today's episode of the Salesman Podcast. On today's show, we have AJ Wilcox. He is a LinkedIn marketing expert and just a marketing expert in general. You can find out more about him over at b2linked.com. On today's show, we're diving into LinkedIn marketing, how we can use it to send specific emails to specific people through Sales Navigator, how we can send LinkedIn emails to mass amounts of potential decision makers through sponsored emails, and a whole lot more. And so with all that said, let's jump right in. AJ, welcome to the Salesman Podcast.
Thanks so much, Will. Appreciate you having me on here.
I'm glad to have you on, mate. Just before we click record, we were nerding out on cars. And so for anyone in the audience, I'm sure you'll get some emails follow up from this of what you drive, what you want to get into, because I know there's a load of car nuts in Sales Nation. So with that said, we're going to talk about LinkedIn specific, LinkedIn advertising. The goal of the episode is to find out whether this is a tool that salespeople can use or whether it's what our kind of enemies in marketing need to be focusing on. And I guess if that is the case, we can look at how they can support us through LinkedIn ads as well. But for someone who isn't, and I'll give you context, I'm deep into the Facebook marketing, Facebook ad tool. I've never used LinkedIn, so I'm in on this with the audience. I'll be asking questions that will probably seem a little bit silly, but they'll want to know as well. So for anyone who hasn't done any online advertising whatsoever, what is a LinkedIn ad? What can we put in it? And then later on, we'll dive into how narrowed down we can do the targeting.
You bet. So there are 3 different types of ad units that you can get access to on LinkedIn. The first is called sponsored content, and it's going to appear right inside of your newsfeed. So if you log on to the app or if you go to your homepage of LinkedIn, if you look at the second item in that list, it should say promoted, and you'll know that's an ad. The second kind is oftentimes looked over, but it'll appear in the right rail of a lot of your pages, and there'll be 3 little text links with little 50 by 50 pixel images, and those are called text ads. And then the third that we just recently got access to at the beginning of this year is called sponsored InMail, and those appear right inside of your LinkedIn InMail box, and they'll say sponsored as well. The absolute beautiful part, the reason why you should care about LinkedIn ads is the targeting. So I'll get this out of the way. First of all, LinkedIn ads are expensive. Here in the US, we usually pay somewhere between about $6 and $9 per click. Whereas, as you know, from your experience on Facebook, even for B2B clicks, you're probably paying between $1 and $2. So they are expensive. But what you get for that is by far the best B2B targeting in the world. You can target people by their job title, by their level of seniority in the organization, what department they sit in, the name of their company even, company size, company industry, education. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. It's very, very rare when someone comes to me and lays out who their ideal customer is, and I go, oh, sorry, I don't know how to reach them on LinkedIn. It's all there.
So I'm guessing because that's contextual as well, that pricing, that there's potentially cheaper, maybe or may not be alternatives on Facebook. But if you didn't have that alternative, the price is the price, right? So we don't need to worry too much about that for the second. But if I came to you, and we work with Salesforce, they sponsor the show. We've done different other behind the scenes kind of content deals with them as well. If I came to you and wanted to get in front of the Salesforce, considering it's a mega company, if I wanted to get into kind of one vertical within Salesforce and perhaps some decision makers there, can we get narrowed down enough for something like that?
Oh, hands down, yes. So on LinkedIn, it's a little bit larger of an audience size than Facebook requires. You have to have at least 300 people in your audience. But assuming that at a massive company like Salesforce, if you're saying we want to show to anyone VP and above or anyone director and above, as long as that audience is larger than 300 people, you can show ads.
Got it. Okay, cool. So, right, there's multiple angles to go out of here. There's direct lead generation, and I want to cover each one of these. Direct lead generation, and then also something that I do all the time on Facebook with this audience, and they may or may not realize this, and hopefully opening Pandora's box here will give them some insights to what's going on with the podcast and how I keep it top of mind with them. But there's also top of mind advertising. So I do ads on Facebook to the people who like our page, and then people who like other pages like Grant Cardone's Facebook page, like Gary Vaynerchuk's Facebook page, I'm trying to stay top of mind with them and entice them into potentially looking at the show, to liking our page, to opting in. And there's a funnel here of I give them loads and loads of value, loads of awesome content. And then after I funneled it down on Facebook, they've seen so many videos, they've clicked so many things, they've done so many other things. This customer audience then gives them a link to subscribe or something like that. So I'm not saying that salespeople should be particularly doing this, because it's a lot of work, and my whole business is built on the back of growing the audience this way. So that might be useful to the audience to know and understand of what I'm doing to grow the show, but perhaps not as applicable when you only need to be in front of 150 people every day to smash your target. But is there any way to do similar top of mind marketing on LinkedIn? And I'm assuming this would be down to the sponsored content in the newsfeed. Can we push out content and get it to specific people, whether they click on it or not, to stay top of mind with them, or even just get some kind of awareness with them?
You most certainly can. So here's the deal. What you're doing, the strategy you're using on Facebook, is absolutely brilliant, and it works 100% of the time, from my experience. It absolutely works. Facebook's ad platform is so sophisticated in the way that they handle retargeting that you can spend money to send someone to content and then retarget them, nurture them all the way down the funnel until they're ready to do business with you. And you can do it economically. LinkedIn, on the other hand, because that initial click is going to be $6 to $9, I have not found an instance yet where I can show ROI by sending someone to an ungated piece of content, a piece of content that I know I'm probably not going to get a lead out of. And so what I recommend to people is, it's not the smartest marketing, but because of LinkedIn's cost, this is just how you have to do it. Skip the first part of your funnel and go immediately to, I'm going to provide you something of value in exchange for your email address. Most of the time, the most successful pieces I've seen have been things like join a free webinar, here's an ebook, a free white paper, a cheat sheet, a guide, a checklist, something along those lines.
Okay, so just so we don't lose anyone here, and this may be way too basic for the audience, I'm not sure. Maybe I need to poll them on the marketing abilities as sales professionals, but a few things to run through. What is retargeting?
Oh, yes. So sorry, I've glossed over that small little thing. Retargeting is the technology that if you're out looking for something on a website, let's say you searched for blue shoes, one day you clicked on a website, decided not to buy, 2 or 3 days later, you might be surfing around the web and see Amazon ads or ads from another retailer showing you those blue shoes, reminding you that that's in your shopping cart. So this is sometimes viewed as kind of a creepy technology, but I assure you it's not personally identifying. It's saying, we noticed you were on the website. We're going to create a rule that says anyone who fit this criteria, they've been to our website this many times, they've been to this page, whatever, we're going to show you another ad. And so you can pay for that initial click from Facebook's targeting, from LinkedIn's targeting, and get someone to your website. And then you use retargeting. By the way, Facebook has great retargeting built in. So does Google AdWords. LinkedIn's is okay. You can use that retargeting to say, okay, we've gotten them once. Now let's remind them who we are, or follow up and do another one of those jabs, or maybe that right hook.
Okay. And what is a opt-in or gated content, or there's probably a million other terms to define this. We'll all know this, and we'll all probably put our email address in, and we've already experienced it. But just from a kind of definition standpoint, what is gated content?
Yes. So gated content is any content that you're going to get after you fill out the form. So anything can be gated. A gate could just be the login to the back end of your website. But yeah, when I say gated content, I just mean you're going to get something in exchange for giving us your lead information.
Cool. And there's plenty of platforms. I'll probably link to some of them in the show notes of this episode, where you don't need to code, you don't need to do anything. A salesperson, as bright as we all are, we can suss out a website where there's some kind of opt-in, a form, and then when that gets submitted, the user, the prospect, gets the content and you get their email address. So what I'm interested in now is, for a marketer, they would then go into MailChimp, whatever it is, we use MailChimp, to send a series of automated emails, to push them down a funnel, to sell them a product or get some other call to action in towards the end of this funnel. What I'm interested in for salespeople is, do you, or not do you, because I don't know if this is being done, and so you can tell me if anyone in any of your clients are doing anything similar. But for a salesperson to have an opt-in piece of content and then contact these people directly to make the most of this $6 to $8, $10 investment on the front end, Is this something that you've seen be done, or is it always down the funnel?
Yes, I've definitely seen it done many different ways. They Most of the sales teams that I've worked with in the past have started from search activities. So this is things like Google AdWords, Bing Ads, and SEO. When someone is converting through one of those channels, it was because they were actively searching for a solution. And so you send them to a landing page that says, we've got this solution, talk to our sales rep. And so they're going to be ready to talk to someone. With social media, on the other hand, you're showing ads to people because of who they are, their professional criteria, their psychographic type of profile, but not because they're actively looking for something. So be aware that you probably don't want to contact one of your leads using the same rules that you do with search. With search, we say, what's the inside sales report say? Call them within 2 minutes. Otherwise, your efficacy drops down. You don't want to call someone within 2 minutes of downloading your piece of content because they haven't had a chance to read it yet.
So we can treat it perhaps like we're meeting someone at some kind of industry event. They're at the event. They've put their hand up in that they are perhaps not looking for a specific solution, but they're there to hear about solutions maybe. And so our opt-in content has to reflect that. So if we're selling to a CMO in a specific industry, we can put together a checklist, a piece of content that is common problems for them. So I guess, we are, money aside for a second, because I'm assuming the audience's companies will be paying for this as opposed to them paying it out of their own pocket. So we are getting a foot in the door with these individuals to build a relationship, as opposed to we are getting a hot sales lead straight through the door. Is that a better way of looking at it?
Absolutely.
Cool. Okay, so we've got their email, and we've skipped 15 steps here, I know, and we can, if we had more time, we'd dissect them all individually. But we've got their email. What is the next step from a relationship building perspective, considering that we're on the LinkedIn platform? Should we now just dump LinkedIn? Should we add them as a contact on LinkedIn, kind of reverse engineering their email address so that they can see our face, they can see our profile, they know what we're about? Should we go straight for the phone call? And you may or may not have done all this, so I appreciate some of it will be a thinking exercise as I go along with this as well. And the audience will experiment with it and feedback to us, I'm sure. But is this LinkedIn's done with at this point? They've done their job, lead generation, or can we reuse the LinkedIn platform to stay top of mind with them, to get more content in front of them, to build that know, like, and trust?
Yeah, so let's talk about what happens when you reach out to someone cold on LinkedIn. Let's say you have Sales Navigator and you're sending them an in-mail, or you don't have Sales Navigator and you're just sending them a connection request saying, hey, I like this about your profile, I'd love to chat. When you do that, the conversation usually starts out with, so who are you guys? I've never heard of you. But if you're advertising to someone, usually they are going to see the ad several times before they decide to click. And so it changes the conversation innately. Now your conversations start with, oh, you guys are legit. I've heard of you before. So what I absolutely love doing is not saying, yes, advertising is the only way. Like, you don't have to do anything else on the platform, versus no, don't pay for clicks at all. Just go out and start relationships. I think a combination really, really works well. And there are, like I said, all kinds of different styles. My sales style, and I'm not really a sales guy, so I have a lot to learn from you, but my sales style is very non-aggressive, very, very much like, soft touch. I want to be a value to you. I want to be a resource. Whereas we've worked with lots of companies whose sales team would say, oh yeah, we're going to dial every single content download lead that we have and ask them if there's anything we can do. So I think it just depends on your style as a salesperson and the company's marketing style.
So you just said you're not a sales guy, but you just outlined what salespeople need to do. And it's clearly that you are a salesperson. You're just doing it because the success that you're having, that you were telling me before we click record, just to stroke your ego there for a second. But you're just doing it over a different platform. I don't think you should not consider yourself a salesperson or think you've got anything to learn. Maybe you've got things to learn from the experts I have on the show, not particularly me in that perspective. But it's interesting that your touch points with this, because I think if the audience is selling, so my background is medical device sales. If I was selling medical devices to a surgeon and I rung them immediately after they opted into a piece of content, one, they're not going to answer because they don't know the number, they don't care enough to answer at that moment. They are in a role where they've probably got an assistant in gatekeeper form before you get their phone number anyway, even if they've submitted it. But I feel like, and I think you believe this as well, as I'm kind of saying it, I can see your face, this know, like, and trust before you make an ask, this giving value up front, I feel like the whole of the sales industry will end up like this. Inside sales is going to change. The used car type salesperson will disappear over time as well. So I just wanted to double down on that kind of like comment, that flippantly as you made it, because I think it's important for the audience to hear that. Because I think this is all the next step of it. So if we paint out a funnel here that isn't automated, that we are going to manage ourselves, we want to get into Microsoft, for example. So we could target because there's multiple CMOs within that company. We could target them. We could even then target the people a layer down from them, because there's more of them, so that fills up that 300 minimum requirement. And any good pieces of content that they uncover, we could even perhaps set it up that they send it to their CMO. Would that be a potential strategy of, here's an awesome piece of content, this is going to help your CMO, and then in the follow-up email that comes when you get their email addresses, hey, no pressure, I'm not going to call on you. Forward this onto your CMO and see if they want to kind of engage. That could potentially be a way to get a foot in the door as well, I feel.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the softer the touch, the more likely it is that you're going to get someone to respond. There are some hacks. So for instance, if you know you're showing ads only to Microsoft and you know these are only senior marketers at Microsoft, you can use the word Microsoft in the ad. And maybe even the ad could say, send this to, and you use the person's name, the CMO over there that you want it to be sent to. And of course, that CMO might not see it. They might not see their name being used, but definitely one of their subordinates is going to see it and say, hey, just so you know, someone's using an ad that has your name. It's a little bit of a hack. And what's so nice about this is I told you that there's this initial click cost of somewhere between $6 and $9 to get someone to click. Well, if you use the person's name or the company name or someone that they know in the ad, you're going to have so many people clicking that if you are bidding, this gets a little bit more on the technical side of advertising, but if you bid by the impression and not by the click, you can get your click costs down into like the $1 to $2 range, simply because, yeah, of course, everyone who sees that is going to click on it and wonder, who are these guys who are talking and like using our CMO's name?
Interesting. So if we stick to a round number of $5, kind of not going into the auction system that's behind most of these sites and the way that ads are kind of placed and the spend behind them, if we use $5, I would pay $5. An organization, sorry, I would pay $50 for 10 clicks. An organization that would be selling to Microsoft might pay $100 for 100 people underneath this individual to click. Because if you put it in a different context, if you were to get, how much would you pay for a meeting with a CMO at Microsoft? Probably $1,000, a couple of thousand if you were paying for outsourced lead generation. There's companies that will just cold call people, and that's, I don't know what they charge, but for appointment setting and things like that, that might be a reasonable cost. So this is also something that Sales Nation can jot down and kind of calculate and then pass on to either their marketing team or their sales management. But if you had, interesting, so the cogs are ticking here now, AJ, of let's create an ad. Let's create a piece of opt-in content, and let's create a little bit of a funnel for the audience to sell a marketing SaaS product to a CMO within Microsoft, Oracle, whoever the huge organization is. So the advert itself, working from the very top, we want to name the CMO. We want to get people. We want to bait them into clicking on it, and that'll take them to a website, right? So what's in the advert? What does that advert? What does the copy look like for you?
I mean, if you want to get straight up creepy, you can use the CMO's name and have their picture in the ad. I mean, be creative here. There isn't a standard, because this is what I would consider a growth hack at this point. But yeah, be creative. Get them to a website to just get their attention, and then have your Facebook retargeting set up to say any traffic that comes from here, yeah, we're going to show them the next thing in the sequence. Have AdWords retargeting do the same thing. You can have LinkedIn's do it as well. But it's really up to you. Like, what do you do? What sort of funnel do you want to put them in? What message do you want to convey? Realizing that you're probably going to get 3 or 4 seconds from the person when they come to your website the first time. The next time they come back, what do you want to convey, and walk them through that journey?
Well, let's create the website as well, as it will just be one page. There'll be an opt-in form at the bottom. So we've got the face on the ad, we've got the name, they've clicked through, they know that we're up to something at this point. They know that something's being hacked, that there's a process in place here. Clearly, they know that not manipulated, but they're being influenced down a pathway. So with that in the back of our minds. And this is like all the marketing team at Microsoft who are getting hit with this message over and over and over on LinkedIn. So the web page, is the goal here, or what should the goal be here? Should it be, I guess, 10 ways that, should we go directly to the product at this point? As in 10 ways our product is going to help your CMO, send this to him or her, and you're going to look like a star? Or should we stick perhaps to industry specific of, here's 10 things you can tell your CMO on behalf of us that are going to make you look great in front of them?
I would go as personalized as possible. So if you use something like builtwith.com, run Microsoft through it, you can see, oh, they use Eloqua, and they use Adobe Analytics, and they use, walk down their stack so you understand. Once you understand what they're working with, you could very much personalize it. And I would own up to it. I'd be a little bit cheeky and a little bit clever and say, look, we got you here because, we targeted you. We obviously, used your CMO's name, but we're being serious here. We've got something that's going to be of a lot of value. Here's what you're using. Here's how we can augment that. And of course, in a little bit higher of a touch, you could do, if you wanted, you could say, here's a piece of content that we feel like would be really helpful to you. And then maybe a subsequent touch after another jab, maybe your right hook could be, let's talk. We have something that's really going to help you out. And you've got their attention by that point. They're thinking, okay, these guys are clever.
Got it. And because that's part of the problem, or part of the hustle as well, of, if you can, it's differentiation, right? You can spend $1 million a year on LinkedIn ads, but if they're all boring, if there's nothing to them, if there's no human connection between you and the advert itself, then I'm going to click on them and then click off straight away. So it's not even a hack at this point. We're building a relationship with them, and we're building intrigue, aren't we? How important is the intrigue to all of this?
I think it's really important, because if you're just going by normal metrics, you know that 10% of your leads are going to turn into a sales qualified lead, and then half of those are going to close. So if you're just going by that, that's the results you can expect. But if you're going to be what we call spearfishing, like going after just the big fish, and you're going to take, I don't know, maybe it's going to take 3 or 4 hours to design this special experience just for Microsoft, knowing that might not turn into anything, but maybe you're going to do the same thing for Salesforce and the same thing for Oracle. You go about doing that, and you're going to build a lot of intrigue very quickly. And I think your prospects with them go up. I think your return on effort will be massive.
For sure. Okay, so they have opted into whatever content we've put together. We've now got the email address. Oh, I guess there's another step here. Should we ask for the name, the mobile number or work number, the email address, what office they're in? Or is there 1 or 2 pieces of content that have a kind of higher priority for us and giving them a lower barrier to entry of actually clicking submit on that form?
So name and email address are my non-negotiable. I need those things. But then depending on how aggressive you are, you can ask for anything else. You look at adobe.com for their white papers, and they're asking you for 13 different fields, and you're going, how in the world? But generally, the more things that you ask for, the lower your conversion rate goes down. So if you want to just start a conversation with someone at Microsoft, dip your toe in the water, just start the conversation, you probably want to do that by just asking for name and email. Phone number feels very aggressive to me. I know if someone asks for a phone number, I'm probably going to get dialed a whole bunch of times, and I'm going to try to avoid that.
Yeah, I've never put my phone number in any online form ever. So in the UK, it starts with 07 and it's 11 digits long, and I just spam the heck out of it.
Yeah, I think that's probably what most people do too. So if you can get away with not needing the phone number yet, maybe you use another data provider who will say, hey, this person's email address matches to this type of phone number, or an organization dialing tree, something like that. And you can augment it. That's much better.
So you've covered exactly what I wanted to get into there. There's so many companies that will give you business addresses, numbers, whatever it is, emails even from someone's name and the organization that they're in. So what I feel like we need from the getting the email is just an opt-in to communicate, right? I think that's worth whatever financial cost is going to come into this. That it's someone raising their hand and saying, hey, I was interested and intrigued enough to say yes to a conversation. am I kind of being too fluffy with this, or is that worth, obviously it depends on the deal size, but if we're dealing with these big organizations, is that worth the investment in time and pay-per-click alone just to get that opt-in for a conversation back and forth?
I mean, if closing Microsoft means this is going to be a multiple $1 million deal for your company, absolutely. If this is going to close software that, the license is $200 a month and the normal client lasts about a year, it probably won't be worth it. So you're going to have to gauge by the value. But what I tell people is if your company's going to make $15,000 or more from a deal, whether it's the lifetime value or just that initial deal size, LinkedIn ads is a no-brainer. It works almost every time. But if you're going to be less than that, if you have smaller deal sizes, that high click cost, unless you're doing a lot of the hacks that we're talking about to get really low cost per click, probably not going to be worth it.
Okay, cool. I love this. So you're building loads of context here for the audience. The context is, if you're intrigued with this, get in contact with AJ after the fact, and he'll do all this for you, or some of it for you from an organizational standpoint. So with that said, and that plug in there, once we've got their email address, I'm assuming then we can search LinkedIn via that email address to find the actual person, thinking that perhaps if it's john@microsoft.com, it might be difficult to narrow down who is actually opted into this content.
Yeah, my favorite plugin for Chrome is called Rapportive, like rapport and then tiv. If you get this, it's a plugin into your Gmail, and any email address that you click on or hover over, it will automatically bring up a link to their personal profile. So you can immediately reach out to them with a connection request, and I think that's really powerful. Rapportive is actually owned by LinkedIn, and they just emailed this morning saying that they're going to be upgrading it, and they're actually going to call it Sales Recruiter Lite, Sales Navigator Lite. Yeah, there are probably a lot of other ways to translate an email address to someone's LinkedIn profile, but the way that LinkedIn gives us is probably the easiest that I know of.
Well, yeah, anything else, I guess, is a hack using... Because I think LinkedIn, you may know more about this. We don't need to dive into it, but I think LinkedIn had a problem with the API. There was some kind of open back door. There was some, their email address was actually hidden on the website, because I know people have added me on LinkedIn, and then I've been spammed the heck out of them by my email kind of like months and months afterwards, and I can't unsubscribe from them. So I think there's other things going on here, but perfect. If that's their software, their tool, clearly that's what they want us to be using moving forward. So we've covered a lot of ground here if we put this into place. So we've got the attention of either the decision maker or people above the decision maker. We have given, hopefully, a couple of these people the opportunity to send something to the decision maker on our behalf. Because we could even say, hey, I've got this book that I want to put into the hands of your decision maker. I've got it signed from the author, which is a pretty easy hack if you want to buy a load of books from someone. If you want to get in front of CMOs, go to someone who's written a best-selling marketing book and buy 100 copies, and they'll probably sign it and ship them to you. So you say, I've got this book. I want you to hand it to them on my behalf. Give me your email address, and I will send you the book, and then you can hand it to them, and you'll look like a superstar for giving them this book and thinking about them. And in the front of the book, it has your signature or whatever. So we do that. We've got opt-in from them. We've got the LinkedIn profile. Other than more organic content marketing on LinkedIn, should we be sending them, if they're perhaps not opening normal LinkedIn messages, so we'd be sending them sponsored email messages? And then I want to fade the conversation over to, if we can't get in touch with anyone, how do we use a sponsored LinkedIn message kind of as an ad tool versus kind of Sales Navigator's LinkedIn messages as well? So we'll come on to that in a second. But how can we, once we've got the opt-in, we've sent them this awesome book, which is an awesome hack I've just come off the top of my head, and I'm really proud of that one. I'll be using it myself. And we've got that top of mind. Is there any other way we can advertise to them, that we can use organic content to them, just to stay top of mind before we kind of engage and we've added enough value to go for a phone call?
Yeah, so there is a sales evangelist named Gabe Villamizar that I'm friends with, and I follow his content pretty closely. He shared with me at an event he spoke at, it's the 23 touch points that he requires all of his salespeople to go through to start social selling. And I'm sure I can get you a link for that presentation or that checklist. But it essentially has things like reach out to connect with them on LinkedIn, send them a LinkedIn message, like one of their tweets, like one of their shares on LinkedIn, retweet something. I mean, it's just all of these little innocuous things that 23 may sound like a lot of things. Like you might feel a lot like a stalker at this point, but to someone else, after 23 things, and I know it because it's been used on me, it will get my attention, but it doesn't feel creepy because a lot of times I might not get a notification when one of my tweets is liked, but I do get one when it's retweeted. So those things. So just to add to what you're saying, I think the more touch points you have, the better. For what actually goes into it, the book thing is brilliant. I think I'm going to probably use that as well. But yeah, the more touch points you can get, the better.
Good. Okay. So let's move on to in-mail messages, sponsored in-mail messages versus what you can do in Sales Navigator. So I think you can send so many a month with Sales Navigator. Is there a difference between them? Is there a difference where one should be used, one shouldn't be used? And then I guess kind of underlying question to all this, should we all be using Sales Navigator as well? Should we all be paying for it?
Yeah. So big deals that you brought up here. First of all, with sponsored in-mail, I like to be really judicious about when I send sponsored in-mail because just the way that LinkedIn has priced it. So if you're doing sponsored content or text ads, you're only going to pay when someone clicks, or you can choose to pay when the ad is viewed at a low rate. And so that basically means if you're going to launch something that absolutely sucks, that falls flat, there's no risk to you. LinkedIn's just going to shut it off and you never got charged. But if you send out sponsored in-mail, you're going to pay somewhere between about we'll call it 65 and 85 cents US to land in someone's in-mail box. No guarantee whether or not they're going to see it, let alone open it, let alone click through and take action. So if your offer is not really, really compelling, I would say sponsored in-mail is going to probably be pretty expensive. So I like to test my offers first using sponsored content and text ads. And then when I have something that I know gets a super high conversion rate, super high engagement rate, then I would test that out on sponsored in-mail. Now, the difference between sending out a sponsored in-mail and an in-mail from your Sales Navigator account, sponsored in-mail, you have to send this out to a list of at least 300 people, or at least have that many people in your targeting criteria. So what that means is your message can't be super personalized. You can have a field to fill in their first name, their last name, but that's pretty much all you get for personalization. So I feel like it's going to come across as more of a mass mail, and you've got to be aware of that. Whereas if you log in to your Sales Navigator account, you can select a person. You can say, hey, by the way, loved you on X podcast, mention something from their profile. You can make it intensely personal, and that's going to get read. So I think there is a difference there, and it might be worth employing both.
What is the open rate for a sponsored in-mail? Because as you're saying this, if the open rates are reasonably high, this is something I could do to people in the sales industry, in the B2B space, to just send an email of, hey, here's a podcast, a shit ton of free content, subscribe here kind of thing. But I'm intrigued to the open rates versus the costs at this point.
Yeah, so the average open rate of sponsored in-mail, if you're getting less than a 50% open rate, it's probably telling you your subject line is really bad. But then there's like an average 12% click-through rate. So understanding that you get a little bit more of someone's attention, you get more real estate. If you do the math, your cost per click is probably going to be higher than something like sponsored content. But you had more of a chance to get them to know, like, and trust you by this point. And so conversion rates should be higher. So I have quite a few clients who use these very successfully. And then I have others that we've tested and they've been absolute failures. So be aware, be judgmental about the types of ads you're using.
Yeah, interesting, because if it was a couple of dollars per click, I would, and people would click, if you could convince them in the copy to, I'm being totally selfish and I'm going to derail the conversation here for a second just to leverage your knowledge on this. But if I could get my audience if I could get a new audience to understand what the podcast is, that it's right for them through the targeting, and click to iTunes and subscribe, I'd pay $2, $5 for each new subscription, because it'd be an interesting hack for me to then, whenever I want to jump up through the iTunes kind of charts, just over the course of like a weekend, go from where we are typically in the kind of top 50 to 100 into the top 50 by spending $1,000 or so on ads. Maybe it's a conversation for another time. Interesting. As we talk about, though, it's probably less applicable for the audience, Sales Nation. We should probably be focusing on the in-mail specific. Is it always worth which is better from a lead generation, from a conversation standpoint? Is it always more effective to send a in-mail and be guaranteed someone's attention? Or is there an argument here to go the free route, which will be less effective, of adding someone as a contact with essentially the LinkedIn message on that, as you add them as a, I would describe it, as you add them as a contact, there's a box to kind of how we met or whatever the box says. There's a box in there. Is it as effective to copy and paste the in-mail in there, or should we be 100% paying for in-mails?
So going back to the previous one, I just came up with a hack that I think might be really fun for you. We know that if you wanted to show your podcast in sponsored content, you'd probably pay between $6 and $9 a click. But as for hacks, since we're talking about them, imagine if you bring someone from Microsoft on as a podcast guest, and then afterwards you send out a LinkedIn ad targeting just their employees or just their company, using their name, saying, "Hey, we had your CMO on the podcast." Again, you're going to get really high click-through rates. If you're paying by impression, you're going to get really, really low costs, and then you might be able to milk a lot of new subscribers out of that at a much cheaper rate. So I think that would be best through sponsored content. I probably still wouldn't use sponsored in-mail for that one.
Nice. I'm jotting this down as we go because we have people from Oracle, we have people from Salesforce on regularly. So that might be the follow-up marketing that we need to implement from that. So I will for sure throw that in. AJ, before we wrap up here, mate, is there any other hacks? Is there anything else organically, seeing as you spend so much time with LinkedIn, that salespeople should be doing on the platform, other than the obvious stuff of having like a great profile and all that kind of thing?
Well, I definitely think that it's all about soft touches. I'm of the millennial generation. I'm kind of the tail end there, but I see this shift that is happening in sales where, baby boomers, they were okay with being hard sold. They knew that if they went to a car dealership, someone was going to beat them up for 6 hours while they sat down and tried to take it. But millennials, we like to go in and be educated and know what we're doing, and we like to make our decision without pressure. And so I think we're going to see more of this happening. And how that translates to LinkedIn for me, if you reach out to me with an in-mail that says, "I want to do business with you," and it has any hint, any sniff of there's going to be pressure behind this, I'm just going to ignore it entirely. But if you reach out to me with a connection request that says, "Hey, AJ, loved hearing you on this podcast, really respect what you're doing in this field," and it feels personal, I'm going to connect to you. And then once we're connected, you can take the time to, shoot me articles, shoot me comments about something else you saw me do that you liked. And we start a relationship. And at some point, I'm going to say, "Hey, this is interesting. I want to reciprocate. What do you do? What can I learn and help you with?" And as soon as that reciprocation happens, you have a relationship. You're not hitting on someone anymore. And to me, that's going to get me to respond versus I'm going to shoot out in-mails repeatedly in hopes that 10% of those people are going to respond and I'm going to get a lead. If you nurture them a little bit more, I think you'll do better with the millennials.
Across the whole market, considering that no one knows in the sales industry, the people who come on the show, one person who's come on the show knows my mobile number. No one that I do business with, even the people, we've done 6-figure deals with multiple huge companies this year. None of them know my mobile number. It's not in my email signature. I use Skype to do all these international conversations, all these calls on the business and my lead gen and my sales side of things. Do you feel like with social media being just the beast that it is, and clearly it's going to get more and more ingrained into everything we do, there'll be a Facebook TV, the LinkedIn app will be baked into every BMW because it's the most common car for sales reps to be driving around in. Do you feel like this cold call, this cold emailing, all this spamming that inside sales is doing at the moment, that a lot of salespeople are still doing because their sales manager used to do it 10 years ago and it used to work? Do you feel like all this is going to go away, not because it's the right thing to do, not even because you get better business results from being, I don't think soft is the right word, I wouldn't frame it as that, but being strategic about the touch points and building a relationship first? Do you feel like all the hard selling, the spam is going to go away just because it doesn't work? More, to make it as simple as that.
I think we're going to have two heads, both of these coming to a single head. We're definitely going to see that sales style go away. On one side, you're going to have the smart organizations who are measuring everything, and they're saying, hey, we used to send out 10,000 spam messages and we'd get 3 leads out of it. And this quarter we only got 2. Last quarter the next quarter we're only going to get 1. This doesn't work anymore. We're going to be smart and we're going to shut this down and shape up. But then you also have these really lean strategic organizations who will go out and usually they're run by younger people, and the first thing they're going to say is, yeah, we don't want to be perceived that way. We're going to go out and start with a softer touch, more of the jab, 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 right hook philosophy rather than go in for the kill. And I think they're both going to find that it's a lot more effective that way, and they're going to change. But I don't think there's going to be one cause for it all, and it's going to happen gradually.
I think the perceived element of this is really important. I'm glad you said that. And it's something I've banged about on the show multiple times. And I think LinkedIn is, and we'll wrap up with this, I think LinkedIn is a great example of this, of if you on your personal LinkedIn profile are adding hundreds of people a week and you're just spamming them and spamming them and spamming them, what's going to happen in 46 or 48 months from here, your personal brand is going to get hit. You're going to be seen in your industry from all these decision makers that you've spammed over the years that it's coming from you, that you are a poor salesperson, that you are not someone they want to do business with long term because you have been spamming from your LinkedIn profile. And I don't think this has ever been the case before. I think you could hide behind your company, you could make a ton of cold calls, and your first line is, hey, it's John from XYZ company, and they're remembering the company, they're not remembering John. But when it's your face on there, when they can look over your history and see you've worked at these places, I think it's tying all into this mental image of what's happening, I think, of the internet in general, where you're seeing less people using pseudonyms, when people are using their actual names as their usernames, people are using the actual pictures of themselves on all these profiles, which wasn't the case for anything other than Facebook when that first popped on the scene. You're going to see everything getting more legitimized, and it's going to be more and more difficult to do all this spamming without your personal brand being hit, without your personal brand being hit. So I just wanted to interject that into the end of the conversation here, AJ, because I don't want the audience to make mistakes now, which kick them in the arse in 5 years' time when someone comes to sell you. Your business is now doing 200 million a year. You've just conglomerated and took over 3 other ad agencies. You're doing incredible things, and they sent you a spam email now, and you look, because it'll be like this as well. Interesting. I've never even thought about this. This is amazing. So they send you a spam email now. 5 years' time, they send you another email when they've learned the lesson, and in your inbox, you're going to see the spam email. This person's changed companies 4 or 5 times now, but they're going to see the spam email from 4 companies ago, and then the new email from that. There's going to be a chain of conversation there unless they close their LinkedIn profile and start over again. I've never even thought about it like that, but that's going to be the case for a lot of people, I'm sure. So with that, AJ, to wrap up, mate, I've got one final question that I ask everyone that comes on the show, and that is, if you could go back in time and speak to your younger self, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give him to help him become better at selling?
Well, the biggest achievement I made in selling was early on when I very first started my company. I was operating out of a place of fear. I needed to provide for my family. I had 3 kids with 1 on the way, and I was really scared. So the first meeting I went in where they said, okay, give us your pitch, I was like, okay, well, I don't really know that I have a pitch, but here it goes. And that was like the worst sales conversation I've ever had versus when I finally got to a position where I knew that my family was taken care of, the business was making enough money to cover things, all of a sudden I could start having really legitimate conversations with people and saying, you know what, actually LinkedIn is probably not the best way for you to do your marketing right now. Wait until X, wait until you have better content, wait until you have more budget. And I can start having these conversations that are generating trust. So if I could give myself advice, it would be, always operate out of confidence, even if there is fear. And because that's the way that you're going to get the sale. Because I told you, I don't consider myself a sales guy. I was just kind of forced into this because I was a really good tactician, really good at doing LinkedIn ads. And then I had to go out and start a company around it. But now my sales style, I've kind of settled into it. And it really is all about what is best for the customer. And once you figure that out, you can have a real, genuine conversation.
Love it. I love it. And just another layer on this, and to use your example there, you email or you LinkedIn message someone saying, you're not a great fit for this right now. they change around 3 or 4 companies and then reach out to you on the next occasion, they've seen that trust building email when they send you the next LinkedIn message, and you just got a feed of trust there, and it's almost, how to describe it? It's just a documentation of every time you send this email, every time you say to someone you're not quite right, every time you don't try and manipulate them or influence them, it's almost money in the bank for the future, right? Is that a reasonable way to look at it?
Yes, this happens all the time to me. Someone that I turn down now that I could feasibly talk into doing it, that I might earn, $2,000 or $3,000 before they decide it's not working and quit. That same person would come back and say, "Hey, I'm now at a company with a bigger budget or better content," and then they become clients that are spending, hundreds of thousands on LinkedIn ads, and it's much better for me. So yeah, operate out of a place of confidence, not from fear, and your future is going to look bright, even though you're probably going to lose a few grand right now.
Perfect. Well, with that, AJ, I believe you've got an opt-in for us here, which you can share us the link with, and then share us a link so we can find out more about you and everything that you're up to as well.
Sounds great. Well, yeah, this is for anyone who wants to know how B2 Linked starts doing LinkedIn advertising. So if you're saying, yeah, we don't really want to hire an agency to do this, we want to give it a stab ourselves, go to B2 Linked, that's the letter B, the number 2, then the word linked.com/checklist. And then this is the same process that me and my team use for every new account we bring on. And you can make sure that you're started right. And then, by the way, if you go to the website and fill out the contact form, or if you download the checklist, you don't have to be worried about, a sales guy jumping in and trying to force something down your throat. From this what my sales style is. It's very light. I want to be of service to you. So, fill out the form, get the content, and don't worry about ever being followed up with if you opt out.
Perfect. Well, with that, AJ, I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for sharing some hacks and expertise and giving me some personal, selfish advice on this of how to grow the audience. I appreciate that, mate. And I want to thank you for joining us on the Salesman Podcast.
Well, thank you so much. Will Barron, ladies and gentlemen. Woo!